Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see you here this morning. Welcome to anyone who's joining us online as well. Today is our second day of a 7-month program where I'm sharing teachings with students to help them develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. It's called the Group Learning Program, and each Sunday morning at 9 a.m. we get together here at the temple and I live stream this, and it's also Sunday evening from my home. I do it there where I live stream it as well. There's no live audience there, but no matter what time zone you're in, you can get access to this program by logging into our Facebook, our YouTube, our Zoom. You can be reading the books. You can be attending the classes, because this is only the second class. And today is where I'm going to share with you guys the very first teaching of the Buddha, where I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths, as well as what's called right intention. These are the first 2 steps of the Eightfold Path. There's a core central teaching that the Buddha shares, which is called the Eightfold Path. And if you are interested in getting to enlightenment, you would need to know this path inside and out, backwards and forwards. So at the beginning of this group learning program, I take 3 classes and I break it up into 3 individual sections: wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And I teach it to you based on the original words of the Buddha, helping you to be able to learn it, examine it, investigate it, to reflect on it, to independently verify it, and then to practice it, because this is the basis of training your mind to be able to get to the enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. I'm going to show you how to do this when we get to the Eightfold Path and right view and the Four Noble Truths, where you can learn something, you can reflect on it, and then you can practice it. And in this way, you'll develop wisdom about the path to enlightenment. Essentially, by the end of today, you could potentially have a real breakthrough where you understand what is causing all your discontent feelings. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, with a lack of wisdom, we blame our feelings on other people. We think that the anger and the sadness and the frustration, the guilt, shame, fear, the stress and anxiety and all these other feelings are being caused by others. But what you're going to be able to see today in a way that you can independently verify is how your mind is actually causing these feelings itself. And that's why you can actually eliminate them. You don't have to live with anger and sadness and frustration for the rest of your life. You can actually eliminate these feelings, and that's what the teachings of the Buddha are here for, is to be able to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. So I'm going to start off with a meditation, because this is part of the training of the teachings of the Buddha, but then you're going to need to learn his actual teachings, which is what I'll do after the meditation. This meditation that we'll do is called breathing mindfulness meditation, where we'll start with a chant to kind of ease us into the meditation. This is going to help prepare the mind, develop awareness of mind, awareness of the breath. It'll help develop memory and concentration to ease the mind into meditation, actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you would like to chant along with me, there's laminated sheets over there on the table. You're welcome to get those. For those of you guys online, you can get it on the website by going to buddhadailywisdom.com, and then you click on free books, and you'll see down towards the bottom, you'll see this chanting sheet. These chanting sheets have the Pali language on there, so you can see what we're actually chanting, and you'll see the English translations as well. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, because everything he taught was oral. They didn't write anything down during his lifetime, because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. It existed in China, but it didn't exist in the area where the Buddha was teaching, which we refer to as Northeast India. So they didn't write things down until shortly after his death. So every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally as a way to commit them to memory. And this is where chanting came about. So there's nothing mystical or magical about chanting. It's not a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. Sometimes people take it that way today, but that's not the way that it was started with the Buddha. And this is just a misunderstanding that people are having. So if you would like to chant along, it's going to help produce better improvement to the quality of the mind and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you see the English translations, you're going to see a lot of respect and gratitude and admiration for the Buddha in these chants. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha actually created these chants himself. His students probably created them either during his life or maybe after his death, because he helped students without any expectations, helping them move from the anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to this peaceful and joyful mental state, which is enlightenment. And this is a permanent mental state. Once your mind is in the enlightened mental state, you will never again experience any of those discontent feelings. It's physically impossible. for an enlightened being to experience anger or sadness or any of these other discontent feelings. And you'll understand more about that after our talk today. So these chants were probably created by his students because they had a lot of respect and gratitude for him, because he shared teachings helping them move to this mental state, and he didn't have any expectation. He didn't want anything from his students. He just shared his teachings freely with others. So I'll start that with the meditation. I'll be starting with the chanting. That'll ease us into the meditation. Then you'll hear me giving you some guidance during the actual meditation. I'll be guiding you in the meditation itself. Then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet. We'll just all be meditating. Those of us here and everyone who's joining us online, or if you're watching this on the replay or the recording, you can be meditating. And then after the meditation, we'll come out of that with some more chanting. For those of you guys that are looking for some guidance on body positioning during meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught for meditation. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. And he taught these different positions because your body can't permanently be in the same position all the time. As you age or you have accidents or different things like this, you're going to need to change your body position. But oftentimes people are learning on the floor. So I'll give you guidance about the meditation in terms of sitting on the floor in a chair or something like this. If you're at home, you might be on a couch or a bench or in a wheelchair or something like this. It's not about everybody sitting in exactly the same position. So you can sit however you're comfortable, but I'll give you some guidance on sitting that will help you as you're just getting started with this meditation. Oftentimes people are sitting on the floor and you have a cushion under your rear. This kind of helps soften your seat a bit. So you might have 1 or even more cushions under your rear. And then you would like to just lightly cross your legs. If your legs are real tight, this will impede the circulation. So if you have just a lightly crossed legs, this will really help. It'll allow the circulation to flow. If at any point you notice any pain, you should adjust your body positioning. Don't sit through the pain. We have chairs that you're welcome to use as well. So lightly crossing your legs is usually best. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This helps to get the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So that can help you as well if you like to do that. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everybody doing it exactly the same way. Some people might put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people like to put their palms up or rest their hands comfortably in their lap. It's really up to you. And the same thing goes for anybody who's sitting on a chair or a bench or sofa or wheelchair. You can sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor, lightly cross at the ankles, and then same thing with the hands and arms. You can put your hands and arms wherever you feel comfortable. You can see me, I'm sitting in a chair with my legs crossed. So there's many different ways to sit. There's not just one fixed way to actually sit. You do whatever's comfortable for you. The upper body, it really helps if it's erect with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, so you can actively train the mind. You're actively training the mind in this purposeful, dedicated training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities during the meditation. So you would like to have the sternum up and the shoulders back, which will keep the mind attentive and alert while you're actually training it. It also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose because your your chest is open and you can breathe easily into your lungs. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the chanting, which I mentioned you guys are welcome to join along in, and then I'll come back in with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Wat Tung Mahakawanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakawata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body, hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาโพตังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสขะโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone here at the temple, and welcome to everyone who's online joining us as well. Nice to see all of you this morning. Just so that you guys know, those of you that are new here to the temple, there's a bathroom in the back of the room that you're welcome to use at any time. It's the last door on the right. You're welcome to get up and use the restroom as you like. There's even larger bathrooms outside the classroom. If you go out to the parking lot, you'll see signs that take you around to the main temple bathrooms. You're welcome to use those. We even have water and juice, and sometimes there's snacks over there that show up from our students that you're welcome to help yourself to. In fact, those of you guys that are in the back, I know you guys came in, you guys can sit wherever you like. Oftentimes people are sitting up here in the front, but it seems like today everybody made a horseshoe, and those of you guys that came in later, you kind of sat in the back. Don't feel like you're being excluded. You're more than welcome to sit up here in this area. Usually people sit up in this area as well. So to just let you guys know, sit wherever you're comfortable, move around as you like. It's up to you. I'm here to share the teachings of the Buddha with you and help you guys to understand the path to enlightenment. This meditation that we did is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a meditation that is a primary form of training in addition to other things that you would need to know in order to make your way to enlightenment. As I mentioned, this is the second day of a 7-month program where I'm helping students to learn each Sunday the path to enlightenment. We use this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, as the foundational text. This book can be downloaded for free from our website. You can just go to buddhadailywisdom.com and get it from there. You can take it and go print it if you like like to, you can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order them on Amazon if you have access to Amazon. What I do is each Sunday I walk students through chapter by chapter and helping you to develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. The path to enlightenment is where you're training your mind to eliminate certain pollutions that are in the mind that are causing it to experience discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, your mind will be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state that you can attain in this life. So all the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all those feelings are eliminated from the mind by purifying the mind and through training of the mind. You'll get to the point where your mind has focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. Because when you eliminate these pollutions out of the mind starts performing optimally. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. Right now, you might find that really challenging. There might be certain relationships that there's bitterness and hostility and harshness in these relationships, but you can transform all of that. You can train your mind and get to the point where you're only being loving and kind to the people around you. And you can get to the point where you're not even experiencing a bad mood anymore. Sometimes people think that this is just part of the human state and this is the way that you're going to live the rest of your life. Or maybe you might be blaming other people for the difficulties and struggles that you're experiencing in life. But what the teachings of the Buddha are here for you to do is to be able to help you learn and grow and develop and evolve into a better and better human being, where you can train your mind and get to the point where you're no longer experiencing any of these struggles and difficulties. I'm going to share with you the first part of the Eightfold Path today. This is a core central teaching of the Buddha, where this Eightfold Path, it's organized into 3 individual sections. And over the next 3 Sundays, I'm going to be sharing each individual section. Today is section 1, the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. This wisdom section is made up of right view and right intention. This is the foundation of the path to enlightenment. So this Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into, and you're learning and growing and developing on this path to be able to train your mind. So the teachings of the Buddha aren't about a bunch of beliefs. You're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping that something good happens when you die. He didn't teach a bunch of rules and commandments that everyone should follow, and if everybody follows these rules, then the world will become a more peaceful place. Instead, he's teaching you how to train your own mind so that you can get to peace and you can get to joy in this life. And you can experience this because as you're training your mind and your mind's getting closer and closer to enlightenment, you can see the qualities of enlightenment starting to shine through. Because you know in situations where you're angry or bitter or harsh or hostile or irritated or annoyed, and when you're in those same situations and your mind is not experiencing that anymore, you'll know that it's these teachings that is helping you to be able to do that because you've been actively training your mind for a consistent period of time. So the teachings aren't about a bunch of beliefs. If you're interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha as I teach them to you today, you're not to believe anything. Don't believe anything I say. Don't believe anything I write in books. Don't believe anything, because belief isn't going to get you to enlightenment. You need to be able to cultivate wisdom. With belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it because somebody convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. And because of that, your mind can easily be shaken up and it can waver. But when you know the truth, then you have wisdom and you won't waver. Your mind will be stable and steady. So what you're doing on this path to enlightenment is you're awakening to enlightenment. When we talk about awakening, what we mean is you're gaining wisdom. And the more and more that you gain wisdom about the world around you, you won't be struggling and having difficulties any longer. When you're struggling and having difficulties with anger and sadness and annoyment and guilt and shame and fear and all those other discontent feelings, this is the mind just not understanding what it doesn't understand. It doesn't understand the world that it lives in. So it will struggle and it will have difficulties. There's certain natural laws that the Buddha taught. He's describing to you what they are. And then when you understand those, you're learning them, you're examining them, you're investigating them, you're reflecting on them to independently verify them, and then you're practicing them, integrating the teachings into your life, and this is what transforms your mind. I'm going to show you how to do this learning, reflection, and practice as part of our class today. These natural laws that the Buddha taught, he's helping you to gain the wisdom of these natural laws because they affect you whether you're aware of them or not. It's just like the natural law of gravity. As we were growing up as children, We didn't understand the natural law of gravity, and it affected us, whether we were aware of it or not. We fell down, we struggled, we had difficulties, we broke our toys, we broke open our knees and our elbows, we hit our head, we cried and we cried and we cried because we just didn't understand the natural law of gravity. And it was affecting us, whether we were aware of it or not. But slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. We could see the truth for ourselves, that it's true. And then we started making wiser and wiser decisions. We started tying our shoes a bit tighter. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk as we were walking. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around all the time. We gotten to the point where now we can ride bicycles, we can ride motorbikes, we can climb ladders, we can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we understand the natural law of gravity, and we navigate this world more peacefully, more wisely, and we experience wholesome results. Because of our wisdom and making wiser decisions about the natural law of gravity, we now experience more wholesome outcomes. And these natural laws, once you're learning them, it's not that there are any rules or there are any commandments. There's nobody controlling this. It's just that we tend to make wiser decisions when we understand the natural laws. Like, for example, this glass of water that I have here behind me. It's been put behind me, not because anybody told me to do that, but because I know from the natural law of gravity, if I put this water here, it's only a matter of time before it gets knocked over and it gets spilled. So with wisdom of the natural law of gravity, I take this water and I put it behind me, and therefore it doesn't get knocked over. These are the wise decisions that we make. As we have wisdom, we'll experience more and more wholesome results in our life. And the same thing is true about all these other natural laws. If you gain wisdom about the natural laws that the Buddha is teaching you, you're going to navigate the world more wisely. And as you're making those wise decisions, you'll experience wholesome results, or what we refer to as wholesome Dhamma. This word Dhamma, it's a Pali word. Sometimes people have heard the word karma. This is from the Sanskrit language. These are just two different languages referring to the same thing. You're not believing in the natural law of Dhamma. You're not just believing it because somebody told you about it. It's nothing mystical or magical. There's no being that's controlling this. It's essentially cause and effect, or action and result. If this word translated to just one English word, I would just use that word because it'd be easy for everybody to understand it. But there's no one word that it actually translates to in the English language. So it means cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. When you make decisions wisely, you will experience wholesome results. And when you make decisions unwisely, you will experience unwholesome results, or unwholesome Dhamma, or wholesome Dhamma. And this natural law is affecting all of us, whether we're aware of it or not. And we're making decisions through our mind, and then that's what's producing any particular result that we experience. There's certain decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis, and those decisions lead to a particular result. And what the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do is purify the mind so that you're not making decisions based in certain pollutions. So I'm going to introduce you to this eightfold path in a way that you can learn it, you can reflect on it, and you can practice it. We're going to dive in deeply so that you can be able to understand the path to enlightenment, starting with right view. With right view, you can have a real breakthrough. You can start to understand what is the problem in your mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. You can see once and for all what's actually causing all this anger and sadness and frustration and irritation and annoyance and guilt and shame and stress and anxiety and all these other feelings. But you're going to need to listen with eager ears. You're going to need to understand the teachings. You're going to need to ask questions potentially. So as you guys would like to ask questions, you're more than welcome to do that. If you're here at the temple and you'd like to ask questions, we have microphones in this white bowl in front of the camera. If you could just come get a microphone and press the gray button, you're going to see lights come on, and you just hold it up to your chin and ask any questions that you like. And you can take the microphones back to your seat because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can share the microphone. If you didn't talk with a microphone, the people online wouldn't be able to hear you. So by using the microphone, we'll be able to hear you here, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. And for those of you guys that are online, if you'd like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. In the comment section, I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So this first step of right view, I'll help you understand it through the words of the Buddha. The words of the Buddha here are, in what, monks, is right view? This is where he's sharing what is right view. These are his words from 2,500 years ago. It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view. So what he's doing here is he's pointing to another teaching. He's pointing to what's called the Four Noble Truths. This is a core central teaching of the Buddha, which is the Eightfold Path. And in the Eightfold Path, there's other teachings that integrate into it. And he's pointing to the Four Noble Truths. Underneath of this line here, I have the top section of the Four Noble Truths so that you can gain confidence that what he's doing is he's pointing to the Four Noble Truths. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you the Four Noble Truths so that you can understand what they are in a way that you can learn and examine and investigate them. You can reflect on them to independently verify them. And you can practice them, integrating them into your life and starting to get more and more benefits out of the teachings. So here's the three universal truths. These are building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths. You wouldn't be able to understand the Four Noble Truths if you didn't understand the three universal truths. And we refer to these as truths because the Buddha knew that they were true. I know that they're true. Other people know that they're true. But again, in order for you to get the benefit of this, you're going to need to know they're true. And that's why you're not interested in believing anything that I share. I'm going to show you how to learn, reflect, and practice, starting with this first one. The universal truth of impermanence. What the Buddha is doing here is he's teaching you the way the world is. And what he's teaching you with the universal truth of impermanence is that things around you are constantly changing. That there isn't this constant fixed state. That things are always in flux. That things are arising, they're changing, and they're fading away. This is called a conditioned object. That everything that you can see, that you can hear, that you smell, that you taste, anything that comes in contact with the body, or any thoughts or ideas that go through the mind, these are all impermanent. These things are constantly changing. These are called conditioned objects. They arise, they change, and they fade away. And then there's something called unconditioned objects. Unconditioned objects do not arise, they do not change, and they do not fade away. The enlightened mental state is a unconditioned object that once you get to enlightenment, it's a permanent mental state. The natural laws of existence that the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, they are an unconditioned object. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. This is why his teachings are timeless. Whatever he taught 2,500 years ago is just as applicable then as it is now, because these natural laws don't change, and he's explaining to you the way the natural world is. So here I just explained to you that the universal truth of impermanence is explaining conditioned objects, that they arise, they change, and they fade away. Things are constantly changing in the world around you. This is the intellectual learning. This is the examination and the investigation of the teachings. Okay, you're starting to intellectually learn the teachings, that things are constantly changing. Everything you see, hear, smell, taste that touches the body and anything that goes through the mind is constantly changing. Okay, but now you don't believe it, right? I'm just sharing with you something that you can intellectually learn. Now you start moving into reflection. And when you're reflecting on something, you try to independently verify whether it's true or it's false. So you've lived in the world long enough, you can look around the world and determine whether this is true or it's false. Because if you can find something that is permanent around you, that you can see, hear, smell, taste, that touches the body, or some thought that goes through the mind, then you've disproven this. It's not a universal truth. So what I suggest students to do is take things that you're familiar with, like this human body. Ask yourself, is this body permanent or is it impermanent? Right? If it's permanent, that means it's been the same your entire life. It's never changed. If it's impermanent, that means this body is constantly changing. So what would you say? Is this body permanent or is it impermanent? Impermanent? Yeah, it's impermanent, right? It's constantly changing. Okay, what about your relationships? If your relationships are permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life, your entire life. Or if your relationships are impermanent, you've had people coming and going in and out of your life your entire life. Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? They're impermanent, right? What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? Totally impermanent, right? It goes up and down and up and down. Some of us go up, 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 and some of us go down, 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 right? So our bank account's constantly changing. What about the weather? Is the weather permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, right? The weather's constantly changing. It's sunny, it's raining, it's windy. Some places it snows and sleets and other things like this, right? So you could go on and on and on and on like this. And if you need to do that, do that. Look around the world. You'll see that everything around you is impermanent. This is an important building block for the Four Noble Truths. When you're walking down the street and you see a crack in the sidewalk, that's impermanence. Here in Thailand, the sidewalks go up and down sometimes, right? They're not even the same height, right? Some streets have sidewalks, some streets don't. That's impermanence. You can look at the walls of the temple and you can see the changing paint and the holes and the marks. This is all impermanence. The wood planks on the floor, they're different size, different color, different texture, different shape, right? Different heights, different lengths. This is all impermanence. We had a certain number of people when we started class, and now we have a different number. That's all impermanence. Things are constantly changing in the world around you. You need to be able to see this very clearly. So if you don't see this to be true, go around the world and see it for yourself. This is a very important building block to be able to understand what's causing your mind to be discontent. The second universal truth is explaining to you the unenlightened mind. This is called the universal truth of discontentedness. If you've studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard the word suffering being used here. I don't use this word, and I'll explain to you why in a moment, but let me first explain to you what the Buddha taught here. I translate this as discontent, discontented, or discontentedness. He's explaining to you the unenlightened mind. And in the original text, he uses the word dukkha. This word dukkha, when he describes it, he says that the unenlightened mind has pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. Pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. This is very pleasant for you to experience this. Then there's painful feelings. This is like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are very painful for you to experience. Then we have neither painful nor pleasant feelings. I put boredom and loneliness in this category, but some people say that's quite painful for them. So you could put it in the painful category if you think boredom or loneliness is painful. But shyness would be a good example for you. It's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. Right? Or say you were on public transportation, you're maybe on a bus, and somebody you don't know came and sat really, really close to you, and your body was touching their body. You might say, it's not painful, it's not pleasant, it's neither painful nor pleasant. The mind is uncomfortable, it's dissatisfied in this situation. That's what neither painful nor pleasant is. So what the Buddha is describing to you is what the unenlightened mind experiences. These are called conditioned feelings. That based on some condition, the mind is going to experience these feelings. So for example, you might wake up in the morning, you see it's sunny outside, and you get happy, you get excited. This is a conditional feeling. Based on the condition that there's sun outside, the mind is now happy. But the problem with this is that condition, when it changes, because it will change because it's impermanent, now the mind ends up in the frustration. Maybe if it's raining, you might feel frustrated or agitated or annoyed. This is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. Essentially, it's going up and down, up and down. You have periods of peace and, other feelings like calm here and there, but it's only a matter of time before your mind goes up and down at some given time. Okay, so this is called conditional feelings or discontentedness. The enlightened mind is beyond all of this. The enlightened mind is experiencing unconditioned mental qualities, where an unenlightened being might wake up in the morning and see it's sunny outside and get so happy, and they're like, yay, I'm going to go hiking. This is going to be so fun. Yay, I'm going to go out with my friends. We've been wanting to go hiking for so long. Oh, this is going to be so great. I'm so excited. And now you go take a shower and you come out and you see it's raining, and then you're going to be sad. Oh, I can't go hiking. I've been wanting to go for so long. Oh, I'm so irritated or frustrated or annoyed, right? That's what the unenlightened mind is going to experience. Well, the enlightened being that wakes up in the morning, they're already happy before they even saw that it's sunny outside. They're already joyful, right? And now they see it's sunny outside. It's like, sweet, let's go hiking. I've been interested to go to that hike for a really long time. I'm going to call my friends. We're going to go out and have a good time. This is going to be outstanding. You go take a shower and you come out and it's raining. And it's like, oh, okay, well, it's raining, so I guess I can't go hiking. Maybe I'll invite my friends over for dinner. I'll make them some food. Maybe we'll go to the mall. Maybe we'll go to the movies. Maybe we'll go do something else. Maybe I'll stay home and just read a book, right? Maybe I don't need to call my friends at all. I'll just stay home and read a book. And this person can maintain their joy because their mental quality is such that they didn't form their feeling of joy and happiness based on the sun. Their mind was already experiencing the joy and happiness before they ever saw the sun. So then when the sun changed to rain, they're still experiencing the joy and happiness. And I'll explain to you more about this when we get to the Four Noble Truths. But this is just giving you a little bit of an introduction to what the unenlightened mind is experiencing versus what the enlightened mind is experiencing. These conditional feelings are going to cause the mind to go up and down at different times based on some condition. And this is where the mind is discontented, or experiencing discontentedness. The mind is unstable, it's unsteady, it's shaken up. That's essentially what the Buddha is explaining to you here. Now, some people might refer to this as suffering. I don't use the word suffering because, in my opinion, suffering explains the painful feelings really well. The anger, the sadness, the frustration, the stress, the anxiety. You might say you're suffering in that situation. But when you're happy or excited, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering. Or if that person that comes in and sits next to you at the public transportation and your body's touching their body, you probably wouldn't say you were suffering in that situation. So if we continue to use the word suffering, then we're lacking the full understanding of what the Buddha is teaching. There's a whole spectrum of feelings and emotions that the Buddha is describing here, and the word suffering doesn't describe all of them. So if we continue to use the word suffering, then we're only understanding 33% of what the Buddha was actually teaching. And that means you're missing 66%. And if you're missing 66% of a teacher's teachings, how could you ever get to the ultimate goal of the enlightened mental state? So if you use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness, this will bring your mind to a better understanding of what the Buddha was actually teaching. So this universal truth is something that you can independently verify, right? As I mentioned to you, don't believe anything. What I just shared with you is the intellectual learning. Now you start reflecting on it to try to independently verify, is this true or is this false? Well, you know that your mind is unenlightened, so you can look at all these different feelings and ask yourself, is this what the mind is experiencing? Is the Buddha describing what you experience? Do you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant? If there's a certain feeling that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories, then this isn't a universal truth, because this is universally true for all beings. Okay, so when we get to question period, if you think that there's something that you would like to talk about here, feel free to ask any questions related to any of these universal truths. The third universal truth is called the universal truth of non-self. This isn't something that you necessarily need to know in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, but I'll explain it to you and introduce it to you so that you'll understand what it is, and then later you're going to need to develop more wisdom about it. What this universal truth is it's actually the solution for one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. He discovered 10 individual problems. They're referred to as fetters, the 10 fetters. And the reason why he refers to them as fetters is because during ancient times, if you were a criminal and they were trying to keep you confined to a certain area, they would attach a fetter to your ankle. This was a shackle and a chain and a ball, and it would keep you confined to a certain area. Where today, we put prisoners in jail cells or prison cells. That's how people are confined to a certain area. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they would attach a fetter to your ankle. This was a shackle and a chain and a ball. So the Buddha describes these 10 pollutions that he discovered as fetters because it keeps the mind trapped in the unenlightened state, continuing to experience the anger and the sadness and the frustration over and over. But when you eliminate these fetters out of the mind is now free It's now liberated. It can now experience the peace and joy. You'll experience this mental state as you eliminate all of these fetters. So the first fetter that the Buddha describes, it's called personal existence view. What personal existence view is where the mind has a misunderstanding, it has confusion, it has a lack of wisdom, it has this unknowing of true reality, where the mind in the unenlightened state thinks that this body is you or this mind is you. The mind clings to a self-image, or it clings to a self-identity, holding on to this and thinking that this is you. And now this personal existence view, this pollution, causes you problems. So for example, if you've ever been in a social situation and you spilt something on your clothing and you were embarrassed, this is because of personal existence view. The mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And as long as you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived, the mind will be happy. But when you're not being perceived in the way you want to be perceived, you'll be angry or frustrated or embarrassed or some other discontent feeling. If you have ever experienced a pimple or a mole or maybe a wrinkle or a gray hair, or you're losing your hair and you looked in the mirror and you were shaken up by this, this is because of personal existence view. The mind is clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. And the mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And if you're not being perceived that way, your mind's shaken up. If you've got a little bit of fat here or there and you're shaken up by that, that's the mind's personal existence view. If you were like me when I was a teenager, I used to stand in front of the mirror before school and I'd use gel and mousse and I'd put it in my hair, and every little hair had to be in exactly the right spot or I couldn't go outside that day, right? I was sometimes late getting to the school bus and I would miss the school bus because I'd be there for 15, 20 minutes trying to get every little hair in place, right? This is personal existence view, right? The mind's not comfortable to go outside unless this body looks a certain way. So if you stood in front of your closet and you change clothes and you keep trying to figure out what combination of clothes and jewelry and things like this are going to be acceptable to you before you go outside, this is personal existence view. If you hear somebody compliment you and say, wow, you look so beautiful in that shirt, or, oh, that shirt brings out the colors of your eyes, you look so handsome, and you get these pleasant feelings, this is the personal existence view. But then it's only a matter of time before someone says something negative and degrading about this physical body. And now you experience the painful feelings. You feel angry or frustrated or agitated. This is called personal existence view. The mind's clinging to a self-image. But then there's also the self-identity. This is where the mind's clinging to a certain identity, thinking that this is who you are, based on your culture, your ethnicity, maybe your nationality or your sexual orientation, your job or occupation, any number of things that the mind can be clinging to, thinking that this is who you are as a person. So for example, if the mind thought, I am an American, or I am Belgian, or I am Brazilian, or I am Canadian, or I am German, or any of this I am. If you're in a restaurant and somebody says, 2 tables over, wow, everyone from America is so kind and loving and friendly. I've never heard this, but this is what somebody could potentially say, right? Maybe somebody might say that. And then if you identify with, I am American, now your mind's going to be like, wow, they're talking about me, right? But then it's only a matter of time before 2 tables over, someone starts saying something degrading and disparaging, maybe about Chinese people or Americans or Canadians or German or wherever you're from. And if you identify with this is who you are as a person, you'll be angry and frustrated in that situation. Or say you've ever had a job or occupation and you start identifying with this job or occupation as who you are. Like maybe I am a food server, or I am a taxi driver, or I am a police officer. Say that I think this way, that I am a police officer, but now I get injured or I retire and I'm not doing that work anymore. I won't feel whole. I'll feel less of a person because now when I'm over here retired, or maybe I'm injured and I have to do a different job, maybe I'm an electrician now, my mind is identifying with I am a police officer. And now over here, I can't be peaceful. I can't be content. I can't be joyful because I'm doing this electrical work. And I feel like less of a person because I'm not a police officer. And the mind is identifying with, I am a police officer. Or if you've ever been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend and you've identified with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife, or whatever it is. If you were in that relationship, you might have felt whole. You might have felt good. But then when you guys broke up, you might have felt lost and confused. You might have felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because the mind didn't identify with, I am single. The mind identified with, I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, I am a husband, I am a wife. So now the mind was uncomfortable when it was single. So it wanted to maybe hurry up and get right back into another relationship. And it thought that was the way to actually solve the problem. But that's not the way to solve the problem. The way to solve the problem is to eliminate the personal existence view, where the mind understands that this body is not you and this mind is not you. This self-image is going to be constantly changing. This identity is going to be constantly changing. The roles and things that you do in the world are going to be constantly changing. But if you cling to this body or this self-image, or you cling to this mind, this self-identity, and you think that this is who you are, when all those changes start taking place, you're going to feel uncomfortable. In fact, some people come to Thailand. They're in search of their true self. They want to find themselves. They might say to their friends and family back home, I don't even know who I am anymore. I need to go to Thailand and find myself, right? Well, you're not going to find yourself here in Thailand because what the Buddha says is there is no self. There is no self. This body isn't you. This mind isn't you. Someone might come to Thailand. They might find new friends, new activities, new hobbies. They might even find a new job or new things like this. But none of that is you. So if somebody clings to any of this stuff and thinking that this is you, you could go back to your home country and be like, wow, I found myself. I know who I am again. Yay, I feel so good. But now, 5 years later, 3 years later, you're right back into the same problem because all this stuff is going to change. So as soon as you cling to anything and thinking that this is who you are, now your mind's going to experience this shaking up, this discontentedness, because none of this stuff is actually you. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions. You can let me know if you have any questions on these before we move into the Four Noble Truths. So remember here, you can use the mics, and then online you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So do you guys have any questions here or online? I'm going to check here online, see if we have anything. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. All right, so what I'm going to do then is move on to the next piece. The next piece is just one more thing that you need to know as a building block in order to understand the Four Noble Truths. This is the way we use the word craving, desire, attachment, or expectations, wants, holding, grasping, clinging. This is the mind's longing and yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind chases and chases and chases and chases. It pulls towards something. It thinks that this external thing is going to be satisfying. So the mind longs and yearns for it. The mind might chase after more money, or it might chase after a boyfriend or girlfriend. It might chase after a new job. It might chase after that jewelry or that brand new pair of shoes or a brand new phone or a computer. And the mind just has this unquenchable thirst that it thinks if I can just get this thing, everything will be perfect in my life. So if you've ever been in the mall and you've been walking through the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you're like, oh yeah, brand new pair of shoes. Oh, I can't wait to get those. Oh, they're going to look so great on my feet. I just can't wait. And you get so excited and you feel your mind pulling towards that. That's the craving, desire, attachment. Or it might have been a video game or a new phone or a computer or something like this. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? You experienced this? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? Okay, so this is the longing, yearning, the craving, desire, attachment. So now I'll teach you the Four Noble Truths. In 4 simple statements that you can independently verify, you're going to be able to see the problem, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem. The problem is that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. Those are those conditioned feelings, the pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. And remember, these are conditional feelings. Even that happiness, excitement, elation, it's unsatisfying because it's temporary. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. You end up right back into the painful feelings. It's only a matter of time, right? So these conditional feelings are the problem, right? So that's the first noble truth. Now the second noble truth is explaining to you the cause of this problem. And this is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding what's causing these feelings so that you can actually eliminate them. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. Okay, I'm going to explain that a few times and I'll give you some examples. The mind's discontentedness is caused by its craving, desire, attachment, its longing, its yearning, it's wanting things to be a certain way. It wants things to be permanent. And when it experiences this impermanence, this change, it doesn't like that. It becomes discontent. So I'll give you an example. Think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you had. You got so happy, so excited when you guys first came together. There was so much pleasure. Wow, someone's showing me affection. Someone's calling me. Somebody's interested in what I'm doing. Wow, we're going out to the movies. We're going to dinner. We're having great conversations. We're going to the park on these nice walks. You might even be having intimate contact where you're having sex with each other. Wow, so much pleasure, right? And then as time goes on, there's more and more expectations that you have of this person. There's more and more things that you want, and there's more and more things that they want from you. And now the relationship becomes discontent. You guys are both angry and frustrated, irritated with each other, and you end the relationship. It's over. And now you might be sad. You might be frustrated. You might be irritated or annoyed. You might have various feelings like this. You might be missing this person. You might be feeling lonely or bored during this period of time. This is not from the love. This is the mind holding on, wanting permanence, craving for this relationship to be permanent. The mind wanted this relationship to be permanent. And now when it experienced this impermanence, the mind didn't understand it. It didn't know. It didn't have that wisdom to understand that everything around you is impermanent. So the mind was holding on to this relationship, craving for it to be permanent. It was longing, yearning. As long as the mind was getting what it wanted, it was happy. It was excited. It was elated. I got what I want. I got a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I feel great. I feel so happy. But then when the mind wasn't getting what it wanted, it got angry or irritated or frustrated. And the thing is that you can't get things that you want permanently. It's just not possible because of the universal truth of impermanence. You're going to sometimes get what you want, and you're going to sometimes get what you don't want, or you're not going to get what you want. So if you can only be happy when you get what you want, then that means your happiness is only temporary. The more wants, the more expectations that you have, the less and lesser amount of time that you can be happy, because you have more and more requirements. If my bank account is this, if my boss does this, if the weather does this, if my mom and dad does this, if I have this much, this many friends, whatever it is, whatever criteria that you set out in your mind, the more longing, yearning, the more craving that you have, the less and less likely all of those things are going to be fulfilled. So the amount of time that you can be happy becomes less and less and less and less. So that relationship that you were in, even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, it was still impermanent. One of you guys were going to die first. And then when somebody dies, the mind is holding on, wanting permanence, so it grieves, right? So it's not just in a relationship, but if you've had grandma and grandpa die around you, or brothers or sisters, or mom or dad, you're not a bad person. If you grieve, you were sorrowful, you were sad, but it wasn't the love that was causing that. Love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. What's causing the mind to grieve and feel sorrow is that it's holding on, it's craving, it's wanting grandma and grandpa to be permanent. And as long as they're alive, you're getting what you want, so you feel happy. But then when they die, the mind's not getting what it wants. It experiences this impermanence. So now the mind experiences the sadness or the sorrow. You can see the same thing at a wedding. If you've ever been to a wedding and you were grieving or the people around you are grieving, right? If it's love is a genuine interest in seeing this being be well. They're going off into the world with another person. It's like, wonderful, good, go for it, have fun, make a wonderful life together. But no, it's because of craving, the mind holding on, wanting brother and sister to be permanent or wanting your cousins to be permanent. And now when they're going off in life with another person, this represents impermanence. And the mind doesn't like that. It's like, I thought they were mine. I thought they were with me, but now they're going off in the world with someone else. So that's why mom and dad or brothers and sisters might be crying at a wedding. Or if you could think back to getting dropped off at university, or even as far back as kindergarten or preschool, when your parents were dropping you off, they might have been crying or you might have been crying. This is because the mind's holding on. I thought mom and dad were permanent, and now I got to go out into the world by myself. Or parents were thinking, I thought kids were permanent. The mind was holding on to them, craving permanence, right? So this is how you can see and independently verify for yourself. Let me give you some other examples. Say you get a brand new car. You really like this brand new car. You saved up all this money for this car. You drive this car off the parking lot at the dealership. All your friends are waving to you, saying, wow, look at her. She's so successful. Wow, look at him. He looks so handsome in that car. Wow, you got this perfect car. You're driving down the street. You've been saving for 5 or 10 years to get this car. And now you park it at a store and you go inside. And when you come out, there's a scratch on your car. You get angry, you get frustrated. It's not the scratch, and it's not the person who caused the scratch. That's not what's causing your anger, your frustration. What's causing it is the mind is craving permanence. It's wanting things to be a certain way. It had the expectation that this car was going to look a certain way permanently. And this car is impermanent. At the very least, it's going to have the paint fade, the upholstery is going to get ripped and torn, the tires are going to need to be changed. This is all impermanence. But if your mind craves permanence, you're going to be frustrated when you see that scratch. Because somebody else could see the scratch and be like, oh, okay, well, there's a scratch here. Let me take some action. And now they can maintain their calmness, right? Because it'd be wonderful if nobody ever scratched our car. But that's not the world we live in. Right? When we walk through the parking lot, we aspire not to scratch anybody's car. That's how we walk through parking lots. But it's only a matter of time before someone's pushing a shopping cart, the wind kicks up, blows the shopping cart into the car, and now it gets scratched, right? This is normal. So if your mind's craving permanence, when you see that scratch on your car, you'll be frustrated, you'll be irritated and annoyed. Okay, so these are some of the ways that you can independently verify it through what I'm sharing with you as examples. But now take it a step further. Think about your own examples, right? Think about a recent time where you've been angry or sad or frustrated or even happy or excited or elated. There was some craving, desire, attachment. There was something you wanted. And when you got it, you got happy or excited. But if you didn't get it, you got angry or frustrated or sad. So it might have been this morning. It might have been yesterday. It might have been last week. Look at a situation in your mind where you were angry or sad or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. There was something your mind wanted. And if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get what you wanted, you got irritated or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. You can independently verify it and look for yourself. And if you can't see it, let me know. I will help you. I've had students say, hey, David, I went to work the other day. My house was beautiful. It looked a certain way, and I really like it when it looks this way. I went to work. I came home, and my wife had this craft project all over the house. And I walked in, and I got so frustrated. How did my mind cause this frustration? Because that's what I'm teaching you. I'm teaching you that your mind is causing these feelings, right? And this person said, how did my mind cause these feelings? I got frustrated, but she's the one who messed up the house. Well, this person's mind was craving permanence. They wanted the house to look a certain way. They expected it to look a certain way. And when they went to work, they expected for it to look that way when they came home. They were craving permanence. And when they came home and they saw this impermanence, their mind didn't like it. So they got frustrated and agitated and annoyed. And while the house can't look that way permanently, the way that it looks with this craft project all over the house, that's not permanent either. Wife's going to put it away. And maybe you might even help her, right? But if the mind's craving permanence, when it sees the house look different than what it's expecting, it's going to get frustrated. And it's not possible for this house to permanently look a certain way. So when these feelings of anger and sadness and frustration and all these other feelings are arising in the mind, with a lack of wisdom, what the mind will tend to do is it will push people away. This might be something that you've done. When you experience anger and sadness and frustration and other discontent feelings, you might attribute those feelings to somebody else, to a friend or a family member or a coworker, and you might push that person away, thinking that that solves the problem. This is called aversion. This doesn't solve the problem because you can see you still get annoyed, you still get agitated or frustrated. If this solved the problem of discontentedness, when you push people out of your life, you'd be completely peaceful. But that didn't solve the problem. When you push people away, you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get irritated. The second thing that the mind will do when it lacks wisdom is it'll become bitter and harsh and hostile towards people. Through your intentions, your speech, and your actions will become bitter and harsh and hostile. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear that person into doing things your way, right? Through your bitterness or hostility. And then the third thing that the mind will do when it lacks wisdom is it'll put expectations on people. It'll try to control people. I'm sure you've been in arguments before where you've been adamantly trying to convince somebody that what they were doing was making you angry and they needed to stop doing that thing. This is the mind's trying to get its cravings fulfilled. The mind thinks if I can just get things my way, everything will be perfect. So that's why it pushes people away. It becomes bitter and harsh and hostile, trying to get that person to do things your way. Or you might put your expectations on someone, trying to get them to do things your way. But the problem with this approach is that there's 8 billion people in the world, and these people aren't going to all do things your way. It's just not possible. Unless you have a massive training program where you can train the entire world to do things your way, and they're all going to have to agree that your way is the right way, and they're going to have to do it your way, right? This is very exhausting. And you could try that if you like, but it's very exhausting. Or you could just train one mind. Do you know whose mind you need to train? Your own mind, right? If you can train one mind, and that's going to be challenging enough. Forget about the 8 billion. It's going to be challenging enough to train just one mind. But if you train your own mind, you can get to peace and you can get to joy. But as long as you're craving for things to be a certain way, you can only be happy when things happen that way. And the world's not going to happen according to you. It happens according to the natural laws. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you, is to understand these natural laws. So this craving, desire, attachment, that's the cause. The longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection. That's what the mind's doing, is it's longing, yearning, and wanting things to be a certain way. But the world isn't that way. The world is impermanent. It's not going to permanently be a particular way. So the way that I encourage you to practice this is that now and forever, instead of looking for others to blame for the feelings that you're experiencing, is look inward. Accept responsibility for those feelings. There's some cravings, desires, attachments that are in your mind that are causing these feelings. And if you can understand what those craving, desire, attachments are, then you can actually eliminate them and experience peace. That's what the third noble truth is. The third noble truth is explaining to you that the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. The Buddha gives you tools and techniques to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And that's what he's explaining in the fourth noble truth. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the eightfold path. That's the complete perfect plan that's guiding you to be able to understand, help you to be able to understand how to actually eliminate the discontentedness. The Eightfold Path is guiding you to cultivate the wisdom, giving you the tools and the techniques to eliminate cravings, desires, attachments. This is what's going to help you completely eradicate all the discontent feelings by dialing this in closer and closer. You might think of it like if I had a speaker system and I had 8 dials, I would tweak these dials more and more to get a better quality sound coming out of the speakers. And that's how you would optimize the sound of the sound system. Well, your mind is the same way. You can dial these 8 dials in, tweaking them more and more, and that's what's going to lead to the complete elimination of your discontentedness, where your mind's completely peaceful and completely joyful. You have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. Your personal, professional relationships are blossoming. You're not even in a bad mood anymore. This is part of the benefits of getting to enlightenment. Your mind's now performing optimally because you've uprooted the pollutions of the mind. And it starts with right view. What right view is the Four Noble Truths. Understanding the problem is discontentedness. The cause of the problem is craving, desire, attachment, that longing, yearning. The elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating the craving, desire, attachments. And the fourth noble truth is explaining the path to eliminating the discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. That's the core central teaching that everything else plugs into. So that is right view, is accepting responsibility for your own feelings and emotions rather than blaming other people. Because that's what wrong view is. Wrong view would be to blame other people. As long as you blame other people, you'll never solve your problem. That's why you continue to experience anger and frustration and stress and anxiety and all these feelings, because you just lack wisdom. That's it. You just lack wisdom. You're not a bad person. You haven't necessarily done anything wrong. It's just that the mind lacks wisdom, and every single being that's ever been born lacks the wisdom of these teachings. And that's why they keep experiencing anger and sadness and frustration. But there's an escape hatch here. There's a way to escape all of this, and it's the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to help you to escape those discontent feelings and eliminate them from the mind. And if somebody would like to learn this, you can actually learn it and train your mind in this, and you can experience the results. So this is right view, is understanding the Four Noble Truths. That's what's going to help you to be able to now eradicate these feelings from the mind. So you have a question? If anyone else has a question, you're more than welcome to ask your questions. This is where I usually stop to pause for questions, because this is a pretty meaty teaching and you need to be able to understand it.
David, I don't know really what the question is, but the word of compassion is coming up all the time. And I realize pure compassion is without feeling sorry, without expecting anything in return. But it's very complicated. Is there a role for compassion in this Eightfold Path?
Yeah, the Buddha teaches what's called the Brahma Viharas, or the 4 healthy mental states. This is loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These mental states of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, they actually eliminate certain symptoms in the mind. They're essentially a prescription or an antidote. This is where the Buddha kind of gets the reputation of being like a doctor, because there are certain symptoms that you experience in your mind, and then he explains to you the antidote or the remedy. So compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others, not the worry and the anxiety. That's one side, that's too far. But then the other side is where you're indifferent and you could care less about other beings. The middle way that the Buddha taught is this concern for the misfortune of others. And that's what will eliminate your worry and anxiety for the world and wanting the world to be a certain way. And it'll also eliminate any indifference, because sometimes people are indifferent and they could care less about other people. So you would like to bring your mind to the middle in terms of compassion, where there's concern for the misfortune of others. And that's part of the training of the mind. And when we get to chapter 14, that's where I teach all the Brahma Viharas, the 4 healthy mental states. And I explain the symptoms that you're going to see in your mind, and I explain to you how to bring in the antidote or the solution or the remedy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I saw some other people. Yep. Not yet.
No. And now?
There you
go. How can one be fully invested in a relationship or any connection due to this approach?
Yeah, so if you're in a relationship in the unenlightened state, the mind wants something out of this relationship typically, right? There's a wanting of maybe financial gain, or maybe if it's a partnership, maybe somebody wants sex and pleasure. Maybe somebody wants a certain reputation by having a handsome man or a beautiful woman, or they want affection. There's many different things that one might want in a relationship. But you can get to the point where you don't want anything from other people, that you're fully satisfied, you're fully fulfilled within your own mind. So like you guys, I don't want anything from you. I don't expect anything from you. I'm just here to share with you. And I love you, meaning I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. But I don't want anything from you. I don't have any longing or yearning. I'm just interested in sharing with you. So you can get to a point where your mind doesn't long and yearn and want things from other people, and you just enjoy spending time with others without any expectation of anything from them. And this takes training of the mind to be able to get there. You can't just snap your fingers and do it. The mind needs to be trained with the Eightfold Path to be able to help you to do it. Let me see if we have any other questions. Looks like we have something here on Zoom. One moment. Okay, Mark is saying, the three universal truths, if there is no self, what are we? How do we approach this in practice? Yeah, this is a common question that when I teach the universal truth of non-self, that people say, well, if I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, then what am I? This is the mind continuing to grasp. It's trying to hold on to something and cling to something as being who you are. And as long as you do that, the mind's not free. It still has personal existence view. And as soon as you cling to something and you say, this is who I am, now when that thing changes, you're going to be shaken up. So in volume 1, chapter 16 of the book series, you can read more about personal existence view because it's part of the ego. And when we get to that chapter, I'm going to be teaching it in depth. But essentially what you need to do is shed clinging on to this identity or this image and thinking that this is who you are. And this is a gradual process of doing it. And I explain some proactive methods of how to actually train the mind to eliminate personal existence view. But you need to first understand the Eightfold Path and get that into practice first. And that's why here at the beginning of the group learning program, I teach that first. But then ultimately, as an individual gets the Eightfold Path well underway, by the time we get to chapter 16, I'm going to teach you about how to shed this personal existence view. And it can sometimes take a year or so for somebody to really get an understanding of this, implement the techniques, and really start to shed it really significantly. But you'll see the results in your own mind, because in situations where you're previously embarrassed or having other discontent feelings, you won't experience those anymore. That when people are joking or mocking you, you won't experience any discontentedness whatsoever. So I'm not going to go into it in a whole lot of detail here, Mark, but if you look at volume 1, chapter 16, you'll find it there. Yes, sir. Not yet. Nope. I can hear you, but not through the mic.
Okay, now it's working. I just wanted to add a comment to the question there, is that it can be confusing. The term anatta can be not self. And there's that question that comes up when it's translated as non-self, where it's like this ontological, like the base of all things is non-self. But in the canon, the Buddha actually he leaves this question aside, where he doesn't say there's a self or there's not self. He uses anatta as more as kind of a way, as a tool, right, as part of the path, because you have to see that all conditioned things, and including the the ego and the self, it's all impermanent. But it's the case where there's the distinction between conventional reality, where we have to say, like, my name is, and conventionally there is a self, but ultimately, right, as you see, as you progress in the Noble Eightfold Path, the ultimate truth is, it's not self, right? And everything conditioned is not self. But to say that there's no self as an ontological statement, the Buddha set that aside, where he said there's neither a self. Well, it's one of those questions where he didn't answer if a monk asked him whether the world was finite or infinite. This is something he just left aside. You follow the path and you see for yourself what ultimately is the ultimate reality of things. Well, yeah, I just wanted to make that comment because itself, there's a passage in the Dhammapada where he says, rouse thyself by thyself, right? And in order to follow the path, you have to somewhat think of the self as a convention, as a tool to use it where it exists conventionally, but not ultimately, right? Ultimately, it's just, there's no words for that, yeah.
Sir, what I would encourage you to do is to ask questions to understand, because what you just shared is actually not true. That what you're thinking is not in the Pali Canon is actually not true. I can share with you multiple discourses where the Buddha shares that there is no self, and I explain to you in a way that you can independently verify. When you come to the temple like this, it's important to ask questions. When you put yourself in a situation where you're making statements at the temple, this is the mind's ego wanting to teach other people. So it's important that if you're going to talk, that you ask questions. This is what's going to help you to understand more, because what I suspect is right now, you probably experience anger and sadness and frustration and some of these other discontent feelings. And as long as you're not coming to the temple to learn and ask questions, you're not going to be able to understand the things that you don't currently understand, because this is a common misunderstanding that you just shared and people don't understand it. So what I'm doing is I'm sharing information with people who came here to learn with me to be able to understand these teachings. And after class, if you'd like to come up, I'll show you in the Pali Canon where the Buddha specifically talks multiple times that there is no you there, that there is no self. But what you're describing is a common misunderstanding. So if you have questions, feel free to ask any and all questions that you like. But if you could, refrain from making any statements, because this is just going to confuse people.
No, I didn't mean to. Yeah, I'm sorry if I don't mean to. I just wanted to say that to try to help. I'm not new to Buddhism. I follow. So this perspective, if you know the monk Thanissaro Bhikkhu, right? He's he follows the tradition of Ajahn Mun and the Thai forest tradition Ajahn Chah, and this is more. I think the doctrine of if you translate it, that the term is anatta, right? But if you translate it as no self, it can be very confusing, and I think it's the better translation is not self, right? But that's just my perspective. Anyone can take it or leave it. I just thought that perspective might help some people.
Yeah, so that's not an actual valid perspective. That's actually false. And I've seen this as well. So in that situation where what you think that you understand right now, and now you're hearing something that's different than what you understand. And when you're in this kind of environment, knowing that you currently experience anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, that your mind is unenlightened, that means there's certain things in your mind that you don't understand right now about the path to enlightenment. Otherwise, your mind wouldn't experience those feelings. So when you're in an environment that you're hearing something that is different than what you currently understand, that's an opportunity for you to ask questions, gain wisdom, and get more insight into developing your practice. So what I'm encouraging you to do is, rather than make statements, is ask questions. You might say something like, teacher, or whatever you would like to say, David, or whatever. There's an understanding in the world that some people think that this word anatta means not self instead of no self. Can you share your perspective on this? Because you're using the term no self, and I've heard it used as not self. Can you help me understand why you're sharing no self instead of not self?
So I have a question.
Now that provides you the opportunity to now learn from the teacher who's here. So I'm not asking you any questions, and I'm not asking you to teach. So it's important that if you're going to come into an environment like this and you're interested in learning, because anyone who shows up here would be interested to learn, that you take the role of a student, and that's what's going to help you.
Okay, I have a question though. So there's the passage in the Dhammapada, rouse thyself by thyself. How do you interpret that?
So the Dhammapada isn't the original words of the Buddha. This is part of the problem in the world, that people are looking at the Dhammapada thinking that this is the original words of the Buddha. If you look at the history of the Dhammapada, this was actually written about 1,200 years after the death of the Buddha by scholars. And what scholars and academics did is they looked at the original teachings of the Buddha and they created interpretations in verse form to try to summarize the teachings of the Buddha. So when you're looking at the Dhammapada, you're looking at a scholar or academic's interpretation of what they think that the Buddha actually taught. if you understand anything about the scholarly community and the academic community, those people aren't typically interested in enlightenment itself. They're interested in the historical context of the teachings of the Buddha and how they've affected humanity. So in order to get to the deep wisdom of what the teachings of the Buddha are, you need to actually be a practitioner of the teachings. And by learning, reflecting, and practicing, you'll be able to see what the actual teachings are. So academics and historians and researchers, scholars who are looking at the teachings and trying to interpret them, and they're putting them into something called the Dhammapada, this is an interpretation of the teachings. So what I would encourage you to do is go to the actual discourses, to the suttas, and that's what's in these books, and that's what I can show you so that you'll be able to see what the Buddha actually taught, because what you're seeing there in the Dhammapada aren't the actual words of the Buddha, and this can be very confusing for someone.
Yes, I'm familiar with the Pali Canon. I've read the Majjhima Nikaya, and my intention is to read the Samyutta and Digha as well. But yeah, the Pali Canon was written, it's 500 years after the Buddha's passing. But yeah, I'm finished with my question. Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't true either, sir. It wasn't written 500 years after the death of the Buddha. There's just a lot of things that you're not understanding, but rather than to continue to sort these out for you, what I would encourage you to do is, if you'd like to come talk after class, we can talk privately and I can help you with all of these things. But you will need to put your mind in a situation where you're willing to learn and you're able to have an open mind. Because if you think you already know, then you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, because right now your mind is experiencing, as I mentioned, anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings. There are certain things that you don't know that you think that you know. So by putting yourself in a position to learn and to understand, then you can uncover the misunderstandings that your mind is currently having, the confusion that you're currently having, because that's what's actually leading to all these discontent feelings, is the unknowing of true reality. And if you'd like to know the actual teachings in a way that you can independently verify them, I'm here to help you with that. Okay? So let me see if there's any other questions here anywhere. Check here before we move on to the next one. Okay, so now we're going to move on to right intention, which is the second step of the Eightfold Path. This is going to round out the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. This is the words of the Buddha around right intention. It won't take me as long to teach this one as it did right view. It takes a lot more time to understand right view because we need to really walk through it and make sure you fully understand it. Here with right intention, the Buddha is saying, in what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So there's three aspects of right intention here that the Buddha is teaching: the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. What renunciation is, where you're willing to let go and give up your false beliefs and your false ideas, your opinions and views that you have that are actually not true. There are certain beliefs that you have that are actually not true. There's no beliefs in the teachings of the Buddha whatsoever. There are certain things that the mind clings to. It thinks that it knows what it knows, but it actually doesn't really know the truth. That's why those discontent feelings are there, showing you that you don't actually currently know the truth. So the first thing that you need to eliminate in terms of a false belief is the belief that somebody else is causing you to be angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. This is a belief that we've all held for countless years. And then even lives before this, there's been countless eons of time that we've been holding on to this belief that other people are causing us to be angry or sad or frustrated. But the way the teachings of the Buddha are is that you're not eliminating false beliefs and bringing in new beliefs. That's not what you're actually doing. You're bringing in the wisdom to be able to independently verify what is true. And when you see that wisdom, you're eliminating the false beliefs. And this is practice of renunciation, where you're willing to let go and give up your unwholesomeness and any kind of false beliefs that the mind's holding on to. And then there's the intention of non-ill will. What ill will is animosity or bitterness, the anger, the hatred, and all those lesser versions, like frustration, irritation, annoyance. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't even have the slightest dislike in the mind, that the mind isn't even having the slightest dislike towards other beings. But if you have cravings, desires, attachments in your mind, you're going to be holding on and clinging and having certain expectations and wanting people to be a certain way. And then when they're not that way, you will dislike them. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you don't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. You don't have this ill will or any of those lesser versions. So what the Buddha is teaching you here is have the intention of non-ill will. Non-ill will is a double negative. So this means goodwill. So intention or thinking or thought of goodwill in the mind. You need to have this active goodwill for other beings. Even when other beings disagree with you, you need to have this active goodwill towards them. Otherwise, there's going to be this anger and this ill will, this frustration, this dislike and annoyance that arises in the mind. You need to maintain this active goodwill or this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And this is thinking or thoughts that you have in your mind. Some people translate this right intention to right thinking or right thought, right? So you could have the intention or the thinking or the thought of non-ill will, where you're not interested in having this ill will towards others, but instead this goodwill or this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Then there's the intention or the thinking or the thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because as long as you're causing harm and you're putting out harm to others, harm is going to come back to you. So if you went out into the world with harmfulness in your mind, where you're interested in causing harm to others, now that harm is just going to come back to you. So by having harmlessness in the mind, your speech and your actions and your livelihood, which is the next part of the Eightfold Path, can emanate from that. So you would like to develop this renunciation, this non-ill will, and this harmlessness. This is the thinking or the thoughts in the mind. And as you're developing this, and you have this right intention, or this intention of renunciation, keeping an open mind, understanding that what you currently know is not everything about the world. If you're experiencing those discontent feelings of anger, sadness, frustration, and others, there's certain things in your mind that you don't currently understand. That's why the mind's having those feelings. This is an indication to you that the mind is lacking certain wisdom. So if you have the intention of renunciation, you're willing to let go of your false beliefs. But if you hold on to what you currently think you understand, you'll never be able to get to enlightenment, because the mind's not practicing the intention of renunciation. And then there's the intention of non-ill will, where the mind is having active goodwill, or this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then there's the intention of harmlessness. And when you develop this right intention or this thinking or thought, then your moral conduct can emanate from this wisdom, that now your speech, actions, and livelihood can continue to develop from there. And that's what I'm going to teach next week, is the moral conduct, helping you guys to see certain harmful things that you could be doing in the world, that when you do those things, the harm is going to come back to you. But when you practice wisely and you make wise decisions about your speech, your actions, and your livelihood, now this will produce wholesome results for you. So I'm going to teach you guys that next week. But just to kind of help you guys see a summary of what I taught you today, and then we'll open up to any kind of questions that you guys might have, is right view, which is the Four Noble Truths, understanding the problem, the cause of the problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward, right? That's right view. Deeply understanding that any discontent feelings that you experience are coming from your own mind. It's not other people that are causing these feelings. Essentially, you're accepting responsibility for your feelings, your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Because as long as you blame other people for the feelings that you experience, then you're never going to be able to actually solve them, right? It's not everyone else that's causing you to experience feelings in a certain way. It's from within one's own mind. And you can actually purify this to the point where you experience the peace and the joy, but you need to establish right view. You need to look inward to be able to see what is the craving, what is the desire, what is the longing, yearning that is producing these discontent feelings. Because when you can identify that and you can eliminate it through all the steps of the Eightfold Path, that's where the peace and the calm, the serenity, the contentedness and the joy, the liberation, the freedom comes in. And then there's the intention, the right intention. Right intention is the practice of the intention of renunciation, where you're willing to let go. You're no longer holding on to your unwholesomeness or your false beliefs and opinions. You're bringing in this wisdom to be able to now be fully informed so that you can get rid of these false beliefs. And you can now have wisdom and you know the truth. Then you would like to have the intention of non-ill will, where you have active goodwill towards all beings, essentially loving kindness. Because when you have loving kindness towards all beings, this will promote wholesome qualities in your mind, and your speech, your actions, and your livelihood can emanate from that. And the same thing with the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. Because as long as you're in the world causing harm through your intentions, your speech, or your livelihood, that harm is going to come back to you. But you can transform that through starting with this wisdom section, as I mentioned, that you can develop right view and right intention, dialing this in closer and closer. Just hearing about it intellectually is helpful, but you need to be able to reflect on it. You need to be able to practice it in your day-to-day life. Because it's one thing to sit here at a temple and talk about love and kindness and compassion, but it's a whole other thing to go out into the world and practice it with other people. You're going to need to practice these qualities so that more and more your mind is effortlessly practicing these things. Because it'll be quite challenging to bring the mind up to that. But more and more as you do it, it'll become easier and easier. The mind will just be effortlessly practicing all of these teachings, where you can be loving and kind and warm and gentle. You can get to the point where you don't have ego and arrogance and pride, measuring and comparing people, putting yourself above people or below people. And this starts with this wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. So I'm going to pause here and see here at the end of the class if anybody has any questions. If you're here at the temple and you have questions, you can use the mics, or if you're online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So is there any questions here or online? Let me check on Facebook here. Okay, I don't see any questions. Oh, we have another mic. Oh, okay, there we go.
In terms of practicing, I'm aware that I have blind spots, especially on these things that are mentioned here. What is a good way to become aware of them?
Yeah, this is where the role of a teacher comes in to help you in some regard. That having a teacher, because everyone's going to need teachers and guides, except for an actual Buddha. A Buddha wouldn't need teachers and guides, but everyone else will. A teacher can help see things that you're not seeing. This is one of the reasons why a person needs a teacher, because when you spend time around your teacher, they can observe your mind and they can help you to be able to see those things. The Buddha describes this as pointing out treasure. That a teacher is pointing out the treasure for you. And now if you can stand the test of that, because it can be challenging to hear from your teacher like, hey, you're not as friendly as you could be, or hey, there's a little bit of ego here. You might need to look at that. That can be challenging for the student to understand. But if you have confidence in your teacher and you know that that person only has loving kindness and compassion for you, interested to help you and grow and develop, then you can get to a point where you hear the guidance from your teacher and you start looking at that, and then you can improve. But ultimately what you need to be able to do is develop this Eightfold Path. This mindfulness or right mindfulness is where you develop awareness of mind, and specifically the four foundations of mindfulness. And this is something you haven't learned with me yet, but when you develop mindfulness or awareness of mind, you'll see these unwholesome qualities, these unwholesome aspects of the mind arising, and then you can take action through right effort to cut them off and let them go and eliminate them out of the mind. So it's breathing mindfulness meditation that you're developing your mindfulness, but then you need to practice it in day-to-day life where you're aware of the mind and you're actually practicing in such a way that you can see these unwholesome qualities that are arising. Right now, you probably have blind spots because the mindfulness isn't fully developed. But more and more as you develop the entire Eightfold Path, you'll get more and more mindfulness or awareness of mind, and then working together with a teacher to be able to point out things for you and help you to be able to see. Then more and more you can see fully the mind, and you can eradicate these unwholesome qualities that are in the mind.
Okay, thank you. Working with a teacher, is it important that it's presential or
that it's what?
Present.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
Not today. During the lifetime of the Buddha, you had to actually be physically with the Buddha in order to learn. But nowadays, with modern technology, we have live streaming, we have recordings, we have even students can meet with their teacher online through Zoom and stuff like that. But definitely when you go out and you spend time in daily life, that is definitely helpful with the teacher. Like in the lifetime of the Buddha, people would invite the Buddha in to live with him or live with them for a period of time, a few weeks or even up to a few months. He would live side by side with the families. And then, of course, he would teach the villagers and stuff like that. So that's one thing that students sometimes do, is they will invite their teacher to come live with them for a few days or a couple of weeks. Or like I just got back from Mexico. There was a student there who brought me into Mexico for 3 weeks to teach classes. So we were spending time together doing different things. But this isn't required, right? You can still learn nowadays through one-on-one sessions. You know, I know that you do psychotherapy, I think, right? I heard you the other day when we were at the restaurant, is you can think of a Buddhist teacher in the same way. Is they're like a life coach, they're like almost like a therapist, but they're doing it through the teachings of the Buddha and guiding you in this way. And you know, just like today, a therapist could do a session with their I guess they call patient or client. They can do that remotely through Zoom. We can do the same thing through the teachings of the Buddha, where you're retaining the responsibility for your own learning and growth, but a teacher is there to provide you the resources and the guidance that you need, but it's the student that's taking the action to learn and grow and develop on the path. And we can do that without physically being in the same place together.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, any other questions here? Yes, ma'am. She's looking for the mic. Oh, there she goes. She's getting another one. That's okay. It's okay. You didn't see it. It's impermanence, right? She didn't have a craving for that specific mic.
I have a question. Whenever I found myself in anger, of letting it go, I realized actually I have two choices. The first choice is I'm practicing let it go without anger, but the other choice is actually at that moment I was like give it up because I don't want to continue. I have some cravings about like running it in a certain way, so actually I can practice like don't give up and practice to accept the situation and so there are actually two choices about let it go or not. I feel there's like two ways of practicing, so I don't know how to choose.
Sure. I think I heard most of what you're sharing, and I'll share with you what I think I should respond. But if I didn't fully answer your question, feel free to ask follow-up questions. So one of the things I heard you say is that you feel like you're trying to decide whether to accept a situation or let it go, right? Right. So there's no part of the teachings of the Buddha that you need to accept the situation, right? So like if you were, say, in an abusive relationship where someone's physically abusing you, you don't need to accept that situation, right? You can understand that, hey, it's unwise for me to be with someone who's physically hitting me, and I can make choices to leave out of this relationship. And that would be a wise thing to do because it's going to produce wholesome results for you. So the idea of just accepting what is happening, I don't encourage people to think this way. Instead, you look at the situation, and whatever is happening, it's important not to have craving, desire, attachment, because that's what's going to cause the discontentedness to arise in the mind. And now with that discontentedness, you'll find it hard to make wise decisions. So instead, what you would like to do is remain calm and now look at the situation and decide, would it be wise for me to move on in any particular situation or do something different? But do it with a calm mind. Anytime you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you're interested to let that go. There's no such thing as a wholesome craving or a wholesome desire. This longing and yearning is always going to produce discontentedness. So you need to eliminate that from the mind. So anytime you see any of that coming up, you would like to cut that off and let that go. But in terms of the situation itself, you need to make decisions of whether, it's wise for me to continue to do this, or should I move on to something else? And that's going to be a case-by-case situation. And the more wisdom that you have of the natural laws, you'll be able to make those kinds of decisions for yourself. Because you'll know, like, for example, that if you were in an abusive relationship where someone tried to physically assault you, you know to move on from this relationship, that this is unwise to be in that type of relationship. But then you need to look at it, closely and determine, how significant was it? What's the history of this person? It doesn't mean like every situation that you should leave. Because there was a time when I was married to my wife and we're still together that, there was a time where we were really angry and she started slapping me on my shoulders and I just stood there and I smiled at her and I was like, anything else? Right? So this isn't an abusive relationship. This was like her being upset and angry and she was venting it out, and she's never done that ever again. It was just that one time that she actually ended up doing that. So you need to look at each one of these situations and realize that there's not a permanent decision, right? Because the Buddha didn't teach this decision tree, that if this happens, do that. And if this happens, do that, because that would be a permanent answer for every single situation. Moving to this higher consciousness is to be able to think through all the variables that you're experiencing, use your wisdom, and make a wise decision in any given situation. So anytime there's any discontentedness arising, any cravings, desires, attachments, you always would like to cut that off and let it go, because that's going to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment. And then that's going to help you to then make whatever decision you think is wise in the given situation, because now you have a calm mind and you can make a wise decision. Okay. So let me see if we have any other questions anywhere. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end our class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for coming to the temple and being interested to learn the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to come here or attend our live streams. On Wednesdays, I teach meditation and then open up to any and all questions that you guys have. So that's what I'm going to be doing this Wednesday, is teaching breathing mindfulness meditation. And then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys might have. The difference is that on Wednesday, I'm going to actually go through and thoroughly teach you meditation, as opposed to today where we just did meditation together and I kind of gave you a little introduction to it. So on Wednesday, there's going to be a teaching on breathing mindfulness meditation using the words of the Buddha so that you can see what he actually taught. And then we're going to actually do meditation, and then I'll open up to all questions that you guys have. And then next Sunday, we're going to be moving into this moral conduct section of the Eightfold Path. This is where we're going to be learning more about the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result, the decisions that you make around your moral conduct, and how you could potentially be making wise decisions that's going to produce wholesome results, and unwise decisions that produce unwholesome results. And what you would like to get to is a point where you're making all wise decisions about your moral conduct, because then it will produce wholesome results for you. If you continue to make unwise decisions about your moral conduct, you're going to keep experiencing unwholesome results. But this is coming from your own decisions, so the wisdom that you cultivate can transform the way that you make decisions about your moral conduct. So if you guys would like to learn that, you can attend live here at the temple or online. And if you can't attend live, then there's the recordings as well. You can watch on YouTube, Facebook, or on our podcast. And I teach these classes each Sunday and Wednesday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. So again, thank you guys for joining, and whatever you decide to do, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.